It's another week, and that means another edition of VAR Zambia. I'm sure you're wondering, where's the energy? What's going on? Well, this is a week of national mourning in the Republic of Zambia, just in case you're watching us from out of the country. It's a somber mood all over. Things are not okay. And because of that, we bring you the ECL special this week on VAR Zambia. My name is Teresa. My last name is Lideta. I'm not alone. I am with none other than.
Chips.
Yeah, how you doing?
Yeah, I haven't been frying chips this week, let me put it that way, because obviously of, certain eventualities that have happened, the 60th Republican president leaving us. I think it was a shock for many of us, that news that came out last week on Thursday. But more importantly, we're here, because I think it was a life that was well lived.
Yeah.
And as much as we mourn, we also celebrate the fact that we had 68 years with this gentleman who gave his all for Mother Zambia.
Absolutely beautiful stuff. And in honor of him, that being the sixth Republican president, Mr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu, we have the ECL special on VAR Zambia. And we have a special guest joining us on set.
Yeah, we do have a special guest that will be elaborating a little bit more in terms of the legacy that, the sixth Republican president had in terms of Zambian football. He will be delving into the nitty-gritties, giving us an insight into the mind of the 60th Republican president regards, the beautiful game of football. I think to many people, it's the people's game. And, Edgar Lungu was the people's president.
And he absolutely loved soccer. Absolutely. So we take a commercial break, and when we do get back, we'll be chit-chatting with our guest, finding out what about the sport ECL loved the most. Do you stay with us? Welcome back. So before our commercial break, we did hint that we've got a special guest joining us in studio. It's time to let the cat out of the bag. Joining us on the set of VAR Zambia is none other than a former sports minister, Mr. Vincent Mwale. Good morning. How are you doing?
Good morning, Teresa. Could be better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Understandably so.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. It's been a while since, I hosted you and had a chat with you about, football in particular. But how have you been?
Very well. Been spending a lot of time with my family and doing a little bit of farming here and there and school as well. But yeah, it's been a long time.
Okay.
I have not seen you in a long time. We've not
Yes.
spoken
Yeah.
regarding sports or football.
Yeah.
But we've met at different
Locations.
Locations
Yes,
and football
yes,
games.
yes.
We've watched football together. So
Let's talk about
good
football
to catch
itself.
up with you.
One of the features of the 7 years that, the 60th Republican president, occupied State House was the fact that almost every single home game of the Chipolopolo, whether at Levi Manawasa or Hero Stadium,
Yes.
he was a constant present there. Tell us about, his passion for football. Where did he get that passion for the beautiful game?
Yeah, I guess being born on the Copper Belt had a lot to do with it. President Lungu was born on the Copper Belt and partially grew up there.
Yeah.
And just like many other kids, I have no right to talk about his childhood because I'm much younger than him.
Indeed.
I guess old people that could attest to what he was like when he was growing up on the Copper Belt. But one thing I know for sure is that people that grow up on the Copper Belt are fond of associating themselves with the game of football. There's too many teams. I mean, look at the teams that play in the Premier League in Zambia that are based on the Copper Belt. Too many of them, and I'm sure they engage young people and see if they could scout talent from amongst them. And in the process of doing that, they really initiate a lot of young people into the game in many ways. And I'm sure there's also things to do with who supports which team. There's the Kitwe Derby,
between Power and
Nkana. And so kids that grow up in that area obviously are talking football all the times because of that.
I
think
Teresa,
President Lungu definitely went through that when he was growing up on the Copper Belt because his passion for this sport was immense.
Yeah, I know that Teresa is itching to ask a number of questions regarding the legacy, but I have to squeeze in this question. I know that past presidents, for instance, Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, ardent football fan of Tottenham Hotspur.
Yes.
I know that Dr. Chiluba was, an Arsenal fan through and through to his DNA. I know that, you know, Rupia Banda had a team called Jiparamba Great Eagles Football Academy where I actually passed through. So, you know, many of these presidents in the past have supported the team. By any chance, do you know which team, you know, Edgar Lungu used to support?
Very interesting question. I am trying to debate because I've watched Premier League games with him before.
Which ones in particular?
I remember we were watching in Chipata
Yeah.
whilst we were there for work. We were watching a Man U Liverpool game. I'm trying to think which side it was, because I know we were watching it, him, Honorable Skazwe, Honorable Makebi, and a few others. But I can't remember. Give me a second, I'll be able to come back to you. But I know the team that he supported, the local-based team.
Which one is that? Which one? Please
the
tell
team
us.
that I support, Kalampa, he supported Nkana a lot.
So,
you know,
he was watching the match between Manchester United and Liverpool, and then he supports Ghana Football Club. I've actually seen a picture of it. So he was a red through and through, in short.
Looks like. It could be. But maybe I'm inclined to think he could have been an Arsenal fan.
Yeah.
If not Arsenal, Liverpool, but
Please,
not a
please,
Man U,
not Arsenal,
not a
please,
Man U
not
fan.
Arsenal, please.
I will confirm this with you in a second.
Yeah.
But President Lungu was very passionate about this game.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that he was a very big supporter of football in the administration, as much as he was, you know, outward. I mean, you saw him attend all the games, as you said, but inside, you know, the back door, when we were in cabinet, had discussions regarding development of sport in the country. President Lungu was a very big ally.
Yeah.
I was a minister of youth and sport and child development. I always want people to add that when they say my portfolio, youth sport, and because I wasn't just minister of sport.
Yeah.
I think the responsibility was
quite wide.
much bigger. But when I was a minister of youth sport and child development, there was a time that there was an eminent FIFA ban because we had not paid Dario Bonetti his dues. We owed Dario Bonetti close to €1 million. And we were given 24 hours by FIFA to meet our obligation, to pay that money. I tried pleading with the Ministry of Finance to see if we could get that funding so that we avert that ban. It was proving futile. It was very difficult. Minister ABC, the late, may so rest in peace, was the Minister of Finance then.
Yeah.
He told me, Vincent, football must fend for itself. There's no way you could be queuing up here trying to get money for football, to pay a coach. UTH is queuing up to try and get money for drugs. I mean, who would I be giving money? If you were in my position, who would you honor in such a case? So football must fend for itself. You people that are running football must make sure that football attracts funding, that it funds itself. You don't need to come and queue up. We have to meet social services here. But football has tended to be an economic activity. And there's too many corporates here that are ready to pump money into football. So I do not have money right now, and I actually saw and smelled a FIFA ban coming. But I was very determined, like I was not going to let this happen under my watch, but certainly not President Edgar Chagwa Lungu. So I knew I had an ally in government, and my next call was to the president. And the president picked up a call and said, okay, fine, I do agree with the minister that we must make sure that football finds its own resources to finance itself. But for now, we've got this eminent ban that we have to deal with. And I can tell you within an hour, money was released. We managed to beat that 24-hour ultimatum that we had, and Dario Bonetti received his money, and FIFA, could not ban us. We avoided that ban. The following day, I even went to Parliament and announced to soccer lovers, I did a ministerial statement to indicate that we averted the ban.
Very proud
So that is President Lungu for you. He was very passionate. He loved it. He did not just see football as a fun activity, as an activity that will bring us together, unite us, you know, and bring joy to us, but also as an economic activity. He always talked about how young people would grow up dreaming to be a Kalusha Walia, dreaming to be a Maradona, and they'll fight hard and find themselves getting employed and getting a job as a football player, finding professional contract, leave the country, go earn money and come back and build houses for themselves and for their families. As in the case of people like Patson Daka, Fashion Sakala. I mean, you see Fashion Sakala is even plowing back, meaning wherever they are earning a lot of money and remitting back to the country. So President Lungu believed that we could get a lot of young people out there to play abroad, and also remit funds here, contribute to the economic growth of Zambia, but also help themselves as individuals, because some of those people are immensely talented as football players, but maybe never had a chance to get proper education so they could be able to access other, jobs that others access. But then through sports, they've been able to look after themselves. The rest of us that actually have, white collar jobs, envy them because they earn more than, we do. And President Lungu did believe that that was the way to go. And I can tell you that today, when we look around and see, there is no time that Zambia has had professional football players exported to Europe in the history of this country than now. In Spain, we've got maybe 4 or 5 players from Atletico, from Celtics. We've got them in Italy. We've got them in many parts in Georgia, many parts of Europe. We've got a lot of young people. We've got them in Switzerland, Israel, and so on. We've got, I think, in excess of 30 players playing outside Zambia, maybe in Europe. Some of them are still emerging. Exactly. And you can see that this is a vision that was espoused by President Lungu and his government. And we are here not by accident. This is out of the passion that President Edgar Lungu had for football and other sporting disciplines.
All right, so you have in part unknowingly answered my question. And I wanted to find out how President Lungu's love for football influenced his support for the sport in the country, Zambia. But of course, you have mentioned the economic side largely, which, he impacted in terms of Zambian football. Let's talk about initiatives. Are there any initiatives that President Lungu championed in the country based on his love for football?
Yes. So some of them may have not come to fruition, but I know that President Lungu and I and other people in government did have discussions around them. President Lungu believed that we needed to put up infrastructure like we did in other areas of social service delivery. President Lungu championed construction of hospitals, mini hospitals, clinics, elevating hospitals to first level, small clinics to first level hospitals. I mean, we have examples, Matero, Chawama, and so on. I mean, secondary schools, universities. Here we have now people going to Levy University, courtesy of his vision and so on. But he decided that we also do the same in the area of sport. But of course, in that area, you don't get much funding. It's very difficult to get Minister of Finance, procure loans or access funding out there as much as they would do in the education and health sector. And so we had to depend on government coffers, and that is why some of those initiatives could not materialize. But President Lungu and I discussed if we could have an OIDC type of infrastructure in each and every provincial centers. This was his dream. I know that we should have constructed a stadium in Mongu. That never happened. And it's been a thorny issue. President Lungu and I in government discussed, why don't we, instead of taking a football stadium to Mongu, where there could be less appreciation of it, because maybe the national team is not going to play games many times there, maybe 2-3 times a year. And also there could not be any Premier League team in Western Province to utilize it, and therefore we'll have difficulties maintaining it. So we exactly. We've seen such in South Africa, even those beautiful, exactly the ones that were used for the World Cup are now white elephants. So President Lungu and I sat and agreed, why don't we take to Mongu maybe an OIDC kind of infrastructure, times 2, times 3. OIDC should have about fields that should accommodate about 15 different sporting disciplines. I mean, judo, there's hockey, there's indoor, badminton, boxing, basketball, athletics, swimming, everything. And he decided, why don't we take such kind of infrastructure to Mongu? We begin with Mongu, but also do that to the rest of the provincial centers. And then we would appreciate that our brothers and sisters in Western Province who are well advantaged by way of, by virtue of their height and
built, yes.
physique.
Yeah.
They could actually make world champions. I mean, like we have Ethiopians, Kenyans dominating the rest of the world. People from that area are so gifted, and maybe they could be good runners. And obviously, they run in sand, and they should have a lot of endurance, and we could make use of that. We could have the best, Olympiads coming from there, representing Zambia. And so that was the direction we're going to take. Have an OIDC-like infrastructure in Mongu, and then you have hockey, you have swimming, you have judo, you have everything, much more appreciated than having a football stadium. But this was going to work out. So President Lungu and I began to discuss accessing money for this kind of infrastructure. It never, happened, but it was his dream. And I wish and hope that, the current government and governments to come could actually look into that direction, not just because this is what President Lungu would have loved to see, but I think it's the best thing to do for the country. Have that kind of infrastructure everywhere. So this may have not worked out, but it was a dream of President Lungu. And President Lungu really wanted us to host the 2021 AFCON. We even threw in a bid. We did not succeed. But, I'm sure we'll discuss at some point the hosting of the under-20. But after that, and testing that, suite of being a host, and the euphoria in the country, the happiness, the joy that it brought to the country, President Lungu decided we need to host the senior team, men's AFCON, and we bid for that. So there's too many initiatives, too many things. But we are discussing football here. President Lungu did travel. I managed to, to take presidency out of office and make them travel to other parts of the country is not an easy undertaking. But I managed to convince a president one time to travel to Kitwe to go and be guest of honor at a golf tournament at the Nkana Golf Club, because the mines there invested more than $4 million rehabilitating the golf course there, which was closed for a while. And to encourage them, President Lungu did undertake a trip all the way from here to Kitwe, and we were together there to encourage them. So he wanted to see that even sports like sporting disciplines like golf also got the support just beyond football. He was a passionate soccer fan. He loved it, but he was also, as president, he had to make sure he creates a balance. Stop judokas, traveling by bus from here all the way to where Kenya or Lesotho and so on. He said, just like football players, they also need to fly. Just make sure that those playing badminton, swimmers and so on get an equal attention from the government as football did. He was very passionate about that because it was a way of employment and livelihood for young people. So there's too many initiatives that President Lungu embraced in the area of sport that we really loved, and I think would like to see that they carry on.
Great. So one of the things that you've mentioned about President Lungu is you watching a match with him attending other sport disciplines, official functions. Let's talk about how he would often attend football games, and he would declare free entry. How did that affect the morale of players and just the fans in the stadium? Let's talk about those particular experiences. What were they like? Let's just paint a tangible picture.
Oh my God! I think good memories. We have great memories of those times, and I think he leaves such memories to even the simplest man in society. Those that went to watch football with him in Ndola. For some reason, I don't remember a game that we went to watch with President Lungu and we lost. I can't remember. So for some reason, it always ended up in joy, as opposed to ending up in tears, as it were. It ended up in joy all the time. So President Lungu was always present. It was beautiful. It all started from the dressing rooms. President Lungu entered the dressing rooms, met the players, they took selfies with him, he spoke to them. The man loved to laugh. He would laugh with them uncontrollably. He was always himself. What you saw of President Lungu in front of the cameras, wherever, was exactly what it was behind the scenes. He laughed like that even when you are the two of you. It was a very jovial man, very happy man.
Did you have snacks when watching games? What would you snack on?
Yeah. Well, we had snacks because I think every facility, Heroes or Levy has a waiting room, a holding room where we'd be waiting from, and they would serve snacks there. Yeah. So there would be chicken wings, they would have mini pizzas, they would have spring rolls, meatballs.
I'm trying to picture him cheering while eating something. I'm trying to paint him a vivid picture.
But then he would not cheer and have food. So that would happen either at halftime or before the game. And thereafter would leave and go. Always great moments. I mean, he would play around with the players and even speak to them and say, from you, I expect 2 goals, eh? 1 for fashion, 2 goals, 2 goals. I'm sure you've seen one of the pictures where he was saying, he actually, when greeting players, he said, I just want 2 goals, that's all. Please. And they scored and they come to him and say, we scored those 2 goals. And it would just lighten the whole event. And so President Lungu was very, very jovial and would go to the stands again uncontrollably. He would actually go out, burst into joy, jumping, shaking hands with people. And so that was, President Lungu at football games. And thereafter again, he would go to the players, Nobane, Mwabombeni, thank you very much. They would laugh and then he would leave. And so he looked forward to the next moment because those were light moments. And before I forget, I remember, trying to convince President Lungu one time to go and do a testimonial boxing match. This just came to me. And likewise, even at football, there was one company that wanted to give free phones to fans. And one of the ways they proposed was to get President Lungu to do a penalty kick at halftime with maybe me in goals or somebody else. And if he scored, and then he would be given a phone to give to a fan. That never happened. I think obviously security people would have a final say on everything. But I did propose to that. I proposed that to him, and it never worked out. And just like the boxing match, he should have done as a precursor to an Esther Piri boxing match, we should have had one of the world champions who, and not very famous, but one of the world champions was going to be present. And then you do a testimonial, a boxing match where you just 1, 2, 3 shots and the guy would fall down, knockout. And but the security people were like, no, Minister, we can't be sure, and so. But he was game. President Lungu was game. Was like, but kuti chawama sana, he was like that. So he always offered himself and was present.
Let's talk about one of Zambia's proudest moments. I know lifting the Africa Cup of Nations remains the pinnacle, but obviously hosting the under-20, Africa Cup on home soil and winning it on home soil was a very proud moment. But I think you and me understand the fact that for a country to host, a tournament organized by the Confederation of African Football, it needs considerable backing by the government of that particular country. Just walk us through the role that he played to ensure that, Zambia had a successful under-20 tournament in 2017.
Yeah, so as patron of FARZ, remember the President of the Republic of Zambia is also bestowed with the honor of being a patron of FARZ. He committed himself to ensuring that tournament was a success, a huge success. And in the end, it was a huge success. So he worked closely with FARZ to make sure he understood what they needed, to make sure that the team was fully prepared. President Lungu was not prepared to see Zambia perform badly at home. And that was going to ruin the moment, or the morale in the country. Running government is not easy, and so sometimes you've got these shortcomings here and there, but when there's, joy in the country, it gives joy to the president as well. He now, understands that people are happy, it motivates him to work harder and do so many things. President Lungu worked very hard to ensure that tournament was won by Zambia. So he worked together with the Football Association of Zambia to provide the resources that were required. And hosting such a tournament is not only you know, left to the Football Association and the and CAF.
Yeah.
But the hosting government has a lot of, you know, a huge responsibility to take, especially providing financing, protocol issues, transport, buses, hotels, and so on. And President Lungu ensured that all those things were provided by government. But more than that, he ensured that he was present at each and every game. And President Honorable Mwale was then the Minister of Sport at that particular time, but I know preparations started way before that, because when the bidding was done and so on, it was way before he came in. But he made sure that the ministry was in line. And President Lungu always expected the best from his ministers. He never allowed any shortcomings. We were all scared, you know, we wanted to make sure that we maintain high standards of preparations in anything or work, because President Lungu was never kind if you don't do anything the right way. So we started the preparations ourselves, and then the Honorable Mwale and team took over. But we made sure that everything was spot on. And thereafter, because of good preparations, because of the finances that went in there, he now said, I'm now taking it upon myself to be present with the team, to be present with the fans, and make sure that we reach to the final end and win this tournament. And he did just that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about a different aspect altogether. He was a great advocate of local coaches, the Zambian coaches, to be at the helm of the senior national team, the Chipolo Polo. And I remember reading an article where he was advocating for, I think, you know, Wetson Urenda to continue in his role because he was interim boss. And then after that, you know, statement, the Football Association of Zambia did give, you know, Wetson Urenda actually a full contract to be the head coach of the senior national team. Most memorable under his, leadership was the fact that we beat Algeria home and away in World Cup qualification.
Led by
Wada. Yeah, by Wada, yes. Yeah. In a nutshell, what would you say his influence was in terms of Zambian football, from a local perspective, in terms of encouraging, whether it's players or coaches themselves, encouraging them, you know, to ascend to the highest position possible?
You know, so his passion for embracing local did not just end with having a local coach.
Yeah.
I remember us having a discussion in cabinet regarding the number of foreign players that were in our Premier League at that particular moment.
Was that in cabinet?
Yes,
Whoa.
it was. But because, look, cabinet looks at a lot of things. There's always an agenda, you know, for each cabinet meeting. We held our cabinet meetings every fortnight. So every 2 weeks, Monday was cabinet. Sometimes we'd start our cabinet meeting at 9 hours and end midnight, you know, be long meetings, but depending on the agenda. So there would be an agenda on health, an agenda on education, an agenda on sports, and so on. Yeah. So don't get me wrong, the cabinet would be sitting just to discuss foreign players in our local league. Yeah. But because that was an item on the agenda, perhaps we're discussing funding towards a particular, you know, line in sport and so on, and therefore the discussion went in that line. But it is true that President Lungu was actually concerned about that, and he said, well, I think there were too many players, too many teams then that had a lot of players of foreign origin. Buildcon,
Lusaka Dynamos.
Lusaka Dynamos, and you know, Zesco, Zanaco. But it wasn't a discussion to the effect that it was a wrong thing. But I think there was discussions around having a quota, you know, because if you're going to have 8 players, 7 players in a team, to the exclusion of Zambians, when do you get Zambians to actually participate in the game and be available for selection for the national team? Yeah. Yes, you do need foreigners because they provide that competition. You know, they give you that competition. They actually test your players, the strength of your players. They, you know, and the whole league, if each team has 3-4 players playing, and you compete and you see yourselves to be better than them, then you know if you play their countries, you have confidence that you've played against foreign players, and that's all right. It's, but he was concerned about having 8, 9 players. And this discussion was ensued in cabinet meeting. And thereafter, we saw advice, to Football Association. So his influence wasn't just on WADA being a coach, and but also on the quotas that should have been given to teams. And this also was again in line with what I said earlier on, the economics around it. It's employment for our people. Young people are getting a living out of this. Football is life, golf, judo, everything. Whatever people earn from there, they actually do take to their families. And it was at a time that we actually had just passed an action plan for youth employment and empowerment, remember, which should have provided more than 500,000 jobs. And there were some, of those in the sports sector. His passion was to make sure 500,000 youths were employed, and an action plan that we championed at the ministry, involved International Labour Organization, UNDP, Commonwealth, all came together, helped us develop such a document. There was a youth policy and an action plan for youth empowerment and employment, which actually led to this whole apprenticeship program. So even sports was part of all that. So President Lungu realized that local is lacquer, but also it does provide a living for our young people.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, as someone who worked closely with President Lungu, how do you think he'll be remembered in the context of Zambian football? Now, also additionally, I want to find out what lasting impact President Lungu left, according to you, on the sport of football.
Yes, so President Lungu will be remembered as a passionate supporter.
Yeah.
He proved it. He went to watch football.
Yeah.
And by the way, before I forget, President Lungu with his ministers played some football match at OIDC.
Yeah.
And if you remember, he scored a goal. I gave him an assist, and he scored
I've
against.
seen those pictures, yes.
Yes, the video.
Yeah.
The video is available also on social media. And he scored against a team that consisted of diplomats, and I remember the one who was in goal for the diplomats was the World Health Organization country rep. And after the game, he came to me and told me, you know what? You might be thinking that I allowed the president to score that goal. He genuinely scored, and I genuinely wanted to save that. But it was a very good goal and clear goal. So he was a passionate supporter of football.
Yeah.
He loved it. I think I should be thinking, he wished he was talented, to actually play the game. But he was a passionate supporter. He proved it. He showed it. Behind the scenes, he was very actively involved in making decisions that are impacting on football. I have just given you an example of how many young people now play abroad. His vision was invest in youth football, and we saw Football Association invest in youth football. President Lungu did have a discussion with me about promoting women's football. And I had a discussion with the Kamanga-led executive immediately they won, when they paid a credit score on me. First meeting, and I impressed upon them the need for us to spend a lot of money in women's football. And I told them, from now onwards, we need to see a different approach to this. And what you are seeing now is as a result of that. President Lungu spoke to me, and I spoke to Faz, and he might as well be called the godfather of this women's football surge that we have seen now. Through me, we appealed to Faz, and Faz immediately, the new Faz, did move to ensure that women's football was promoted. And from that time, you can see for yourselves 2 Olympic qualifications, 1 World Cup qualifications, bronze medal at at WAFCON, and 2 COSAFA, and the junior teams, women doing very well.
Yeah.
President Lungu has actually had a hand in that. But also the youth football that we are seeing. He was also passionate about having schools football as it used to be in the past. So having Minister of Education participate in the promotion of football, youth football. He talked about this a lot of times. And he had so much influence. When he started running, doing road runs, every day, the whole country began to embrace that.
Yeah.
When he started doing fish farming and talking about fish every day, the rest of us, his ministers, a lot of people, came up with fish ponds and so on and began to do fish farming. When he said, let's start doing cleaning, keep Zambia clean, green and healthy, we championed that campaign as Minister of Local Government, and all over the country people began to do that. He was very influential. His love for football influenced a lot of people, corporates that began to pour money into football.
Absolutely.
And so that is also his legacy. People who always remember, you know, you saw so much money coming from ABSA, you know, increasing funding and so on. And I remember one time, a memorable time I had with him, we were watching one ABSA final. It happened to have been Nkwazi Football Club and Koloma versus Green Buffaloes.
Yeah, I remember
and I
that.
asked him, I said, Your Excellency, so which team are you supporting? He laughed and said, that's our secret. He said, because he was a Minister of Home Affairs, so Nkwazi was his team.
Yeah.
But he was also then later
Yeah.
Minister of Defense, and Green Buffaloes was his team.
Yeah.
So I asked, and there were these service chiefs around, and I asked loudly so they can hear, was he siding with the Army Commander or the Police Inspector General?
Yeah.
And he said, no, we can discuss this, it should be our secret. And he laughed in his usual style.
Yeah.
So he was like that. So he had so much influence. Now we see so much funding going to football. We see, you know, teams as well up their funding to their players and so on. He was always against, you know, peanuts paid to players, and also the quotas that I talked about, not having too many foreigners. And these things have had very good impact on football itself up to date. And so you might not see, oh, here he built a stadium, he did this, but results are seen in different ways. So many young people out there
we
playing
can
football.
talk forever and ever because the legacy is so big and so wide on
He was
Zambia
the
football.
best motivator for players and the teams and the
Yeah.
leagues.
Just before we wrap up, memories last an absolute lifetime. Pictures, memories last an absolute lifetime. Now, just before we wrap up, I want to find out, you mentioned one of your most memorable moments with him at the ABSA Cup final. What are some of those moments that you will cherish and just hold on to in the context of working closely with him and Zambian football?
Very
As we
difficult.
wrap
We
up.
had so many
right?
moments of, you know, high and low moments. I remember one low moment when we were in a lift. There was a game, a very crucial game at Heroes Stadium. And we just jumped on a lift, me, him, and 2-3 other people. I think his ADC, maybe provincial minister. And then there was a power cut. And we were stuck in a lift, you know, at Heroes Stadium.
Oh, okay, the lift that takes
But
you
then
out.
the calmness, they just started telling us stories. Everybody was panicking.
How long were you stuck in it for?
Maybe 5 minutes.
Okay.
I think it became a big story. I think apologies from Zesco and so on. I did issue a statement. I was more uncomfortable. He was at easy. You know, it was like, this is our country, this is a reality. You know, these things happen not, you know, not just because I'm president, it's happening to others here. You know, everybody knew the president was going to be at the stadium. The whole Zesco hierarchy, you know. Your expectation is that there would be utmost care, you know, there would be power around that area and the match should go on and so on. But that happened. Whilst we were panicking, the security up were panicking, those who were down were panicking, everybody.
I think that match was
phone
against
calls,
Gabon.
what?
Yes, I think it was against Gabon.
Yeah,
27.
exactly. Something like something like that. But he wasn't, and he just started chatting. You know. And when we came out, he was never worried. He was people were calling for heads to roll and so on. He just said it happened, but it's happening to ordinary Zambians out there. You know, so something to learn about there. He was very calm. He was okay, and it was like that. So that was a moment I always, you know, remember. But like I said, at games, especially the under-20, that gives us a highlight of, you know, the passion, the motivation, the support that he provided to football players, to teams, and to the nation. That was a highlight because it ended up in joy. So being with him, shouting, And I know Venaskazwe would be, you know, debating about who's going to score. Is it going to be a Banda who's going to save us there, or a Sakala? You know, is it Emmanuel Banda? Is it Sakala? No, ni chinani chaku kasama referring to Chirufia. No, Mwala now Venaskazwe would be joking. He would be joining in those jokes. He say, "We can't interfere with Skazwe as long as Zambia never win." You know, he'd be. Yeah. So we had a memorable time there. You know, moments where we had fun, and so did the country. But leaving the stadium after lifting that trophy, all the way in his motorcade to State House, there were people lined up the whole way from the stadium, that Mandevu area, the whole way in town, all the way up to, you know, people were waiting for him to pass, because they realized how much energy and how much support he had given, he had put in that.
It was like
very
memorable. 2012 all again.
Exactly. That is a local scenario, yeah. But even in Lola, each time he left the stadium, people would line up all the way, and they loved him so much. On the Copper Belt, they loved him. Here, just like elsewhere. So those were memorable times that you would wish, you know, they stayed forever. And but unfortunately, he's with the Lord now. We are praying he's resting in peace. We want to make sure we give him a memorable, you know, send-off like we did to Kenneth Kaunda, like we did to President Chiluba, President Rupia Banda. We wish at this moment the whole country can hold together. We held together when we had those joyful moments. You know, and his legacy in this country will stay forever for years to come. The schools that he constructed, students will go there every now and then, and they'll remember there was a president who was visionary. I mean, just think about those who are at Levi Mwanawasa, Levi, you know, University Teaching Hospital there. His brainchild, he just decided UTH was not enough to give education to our doctors and so on. We have to create another one. And all those people that are, you know, getting a service from all these things that he left, be it sport or outside sport, you know, always cherish that this man was here, was visionary. Before we could all understand that Lusaka was going to be choked with traffic and so on, he realized we're going to do a decongestion project, fly over bridges, and we're less choked. It was going to be impossible to do business in this town because every day we import cars. He was visionary. He saw things from afar. Sports inclusive. And we cherish his moments with us.
I hear the passion in your voice, but we are pressed for time and we have to let you go.
Thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you for according President Lungu you know, a show. We cherish that as a citizen, former minister, was my boss, member of the PF, you know, but beyond politics, we think this is deserving of him. We are so grateful to you guys for this.
Teresa, where are we going next? It's a jam-packed show, huh?
Let's go for a walk. Let's go for a walk.
Yeah, let's go for it.
And when we come back, we continue with our ECL special right here on VAR Zambia. Welcome back from our walk. We did say we needed to just walk it off because it's heavy, you know. Grief is never an easy thing. It is VAR Zambia, and this is the ECL special. While we were walking, Chips and I, we bumped into somebody who looks like the president. What are the odds, Chips?
I don't know, maybe it was written in the sky. Maybe literally.
Like, what are the odds?
What are the odds?
Makateka.
Yes.
What are you saying?
Jogging.
We bumped into none other than Winston Ngosa, who is popularly known as IDC. In case you're wondering, IDC stands for I Do Comedy. Bakateka, welcome to VAR Zambia on a sad note.
Oh yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Great. Sure. Thank you so much for honoring our invite. It's crazy how you not only sound like President Lungu, but you look like him. There is a resemblance, right, Chips?
Absolutely.
There is a resemblance. He sounds like him when he imitates him, of course, impersonates him. And when you look at him, there are striking features.
Exactly. Resemblance, striking resemblance. Let's not talk too much.
Chizungu.
Let's not talk too much because
Kulisaiba loyo.
abantu angabe ma DNA test.
All right. Let's talk about you impersonating or imitating President Lungu. How did that come about, IDC? Where did it start? When did you think, hold up, I sound like him and I look like him?
Yeah, okay, so impersonation has been part of me.
Okay.
I don't just imitate the late president.
Yeah.
I imitate all the presidents.
Yeah.
Except the current one. I'm still learning more about it.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think I started imitations when I was in school.
Okay.
I used to imitate Mushi, Akasaka people. Yeah.
Vale
then-
mudinda tiswatsnega kabamba ka red.
Yeah, so everybody at school, they used to call me Mushi.
Okay.
Yeah, until I grew up, the president came in power, and I was like, oh, okay. I saw some interesting features about him. He was a jovial person, and me being a jovial person, I am a jovial person, I'm a happy person. And I just discovered that I can imitate him. I tried 1, 2, 3. I realized I can do the imitation of him. There were a number of guys who were imitating him, like Bwana Njombe. Yeah, so I had to study him. I wanted to know more about him. That's the reason I came up with the facial expression, just to be outstanding from what the rest are doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to my surprise, that came out so perfectly. Yeah.
All right.
At what point did people start coming up to you and saying, you actually look like the president?
I think just the moment I started the impersonations, the facial expressions, everything.
Contributed, huh?
Yeah, contributed. Some people were telling me, you in Mulando. How can you be doing exactly like him? But nevertheless, when I met him, he was so excited, and that made me now to do more of the imitation.
I was about to say, how did you meet him? How did that come about?
Yeah, I was expecting that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was invited to perform at an event where he was the guest of honor.
Okay.
At the Zambi, is it Anyu something?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why he was the guest of honor, and they gave me an opportunity to perform. They hired me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was scared. I was very scared. I was like, I don't know how he's gonna react to this. Yeah. To my surprise, I actually told my friends, guys, in Nkana Fan, but he was so happy, and I was so excited. That was the first time I met him, and I greeted him. It was like, oh,
Heaven on earth.
yeah, like I was so excited. Waking up in the morning, I'm even on the front page of the newspaper.
Oh, wow.
Because why would send you? You know.
Yeah.
Tell us about that, you know, I don't know if I should say you're scared or you were nervous. Because,
Nervous, maybe.
I mean, you make jokes.
Yeah.
But you know, sometimes you're making jokes at the expense of the head of state. So where do you draw the line? Because sometimes the people who are in his inner circle might say, you see what I'm saying? So where do you draw the line between, you know, the comedy and probably, you know, crossing the line to be a little on dangerous line?
So the thing is, we had a president who was full of humor.
Okay.
So most of the things that I would say, you know, he would find them to be funny. Sometimes I would even say, but he has laughed.
Yeah.
You know, you find that he has laughed. So it gave me a go ahead. But of course, to your question, yeah, sometimes you have to differentiate reality and comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a number of people who don't see comedy in some of the things. They don't have humor.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything is politics. It's not everything that you have to politicize.
Yeah.
There are certain things that I can say that would make other people happy, others would feel bad.
Yeah.
Jesus was never loved by everybody. So where am I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So after you met him the first time, I'm sure there were more times that you got to interact with President Lungu. Let's talk about interacting with him after that. What was it like, you know, getting to meet him over and over and over again? What was his personality like? What were your interactions with him like?
Okay, so I got to be meeting the former president when he was out of office.
Okay.
Yeah, when he was in power,
Yeah.
some people, they don't want you close.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when he was out of power, that's when I was like meeting him. Would go for jogging.
Jogging now, former head of state, Mulibakali. You made it in life. Yeah, why are you jogging so?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I would jog almost every Saturday. Sometimes would do during the week. Maybe we'll do it from the gym. Yeah, I would attend that. It was an amazing thing. Yeah.
You'd crack jokes. What were conversations like? Mwale Shimika.
There were a number of things that we'll talk about. We'll talk about football. He was an Arsenal fan, actually.
There we go.
There you go.
Cameraman, zoom in.
There you go.
Yeah. So I would talk a number of things, especially jokes. It was full of comedy. Yeah, just the way it was on TV, even in behind. That's the way it was. So there are a number of things that we'd talk. We would even joke about. You remember the time Tasila was summoned by the deck?
Yeah.
Yeah. He cracked a joke about that. I was like, this man, the daughter's been
Sir, what in your order?
talking about it. God, no way. Yeah, it was so funny.
Yeah.
And he would welcome, embrace everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's what I can say.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's obviously we can't let you go
I don't know.
without.
You know what you got to do.
You know what you got to do.
It's about time.
Give us at least a snippet so that our viewers out there can reminisce about those moments that I think became so vivid in the mindsets of many people. Some of them even went viral.
Yeah, definitely. We would even talk like sometimes we'll be like when he's talking, I was like, okay, so I'm sounding like him. He's sounding like me.
I know you're trying to buy time. Give us the impersonation.
What do you want to ask? What's the question?
So how did it come about, Mr. President, that after you left State House, now you're occupying a house, by Stopira Sunzu, the man who scored the winning penalty for Zambia in 2012?
It was me to decide where to stay, just like the way he has decided. To decide, hey, it's up to you to decide where to stay. Yes. Yeah.
So out of all teams you could pick to support, why Arsenal?
Because it's Arsenal.
Why not Manchester United?
Because it's Manchester United. I can't support Man U.
All right. No, it's been a joy, hosting you on VAR Zambia.
Sure.
And we hope that your comedy, career moves from strength to strength. I know it's a difficult time.
Yeah.
I'm told that you're scheduled to, give some sort of a performance at the final farewell for the former head of state. Is that true?
Social media, yeah.
Social media propaganda.
You can't confirm or deny the allegations.
Yeah, but I've not yet been communicated to, but with the love that I had for the big man, like I loved him so much.
Yeah.
So definitely.
If the call does come, you definitely do it.
It would be an honor.
With passion.
Okay.
Yeah. Sure.
Absolutely beautiful. Well, IDC, Winston Ngosa, thank you so much for joining us on VAR Zambia. We wish you nothing but the best in your future endeavors.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here, and thank you for inviting me over.
You're welcome.
Yeah, sure.
Alrighty. This has been the ECL special right here on VAR Zambia. Thank you so much for choosing us, clicking the like, share, comment, and subscribe button on the BetLion page. We remember President Edgar Lungu and the entire nation of Zambia during this trying time. My name, Teresa. My last name, Liteta.
And of course, I've been Isaac Chipotang. It's been a wonderful show. I think we've gone down memory lane, just interrogating and, assessing his impact in terms of Zambian football. The people's sport, as we said, by the people's president.
Yep. Till next week.